What's up, everybody? Today, I'm going to show you the step-by-step process that helped my client Steph go from 9K per month to 36K per month. And then consistently, we did that over the next few months. I'm going to show you every single step all throughout so that you know exactly how to do this for yourself and for your own coaching business. So let's get started. There are three main steps that we have to go through. But before we get started, if you don't know who I am, my name is Guido. What I do is I help coaches that are stuck between 5 to 10K per month to implement systems and a DM setter so they can grow to 50K per month and beyond. So subscribe if you want free content to help you do that. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me on Instagram. Let's get started. So let me share my screen here. And this is the journey that I basically took my client through in order to help him get to 36K per month. Okay. So there were a few things that were in place already for him specifically, but just so you know, we'll open up here my client's Instagram so you have an idea of who he is. There we go. This is my client. So Steph, when around March, he started running ads, basically follower ads that were helping him gain more followers and then be able to reach out to those people, start conversations, book them onto calls, and then from there, close them, obviously, right? His price point was around 2,400. And basically in April 19th, we started working together. And he'd been stuck around like 10, 8 to 12 kind of K per month. And the thing is that he had two setters and one closer and himself closing. So there was a lot of things kind of going on. A lot of people hired maybe at not the right stage potentially, or just people that were not as efficient as they could have been. And but definitely a lot of A players, all of them, knew what they had to do, and they had all great potential. They just perhaps need a little bit of direction and a little bit of systems, especially the systems. So in March, he had around like 5K followers, and February, then his followers just started to blow up organically, not just from the ads. So he stopped the ads. So the majority of it was actually organic. And because this is like a topic that is very kind of goes viral, right? So this is him now, 138K followers. Content was always amazing, even better now, obviously. So that helps a ton. But so just want to walk through the step by step with you. Okay. So what did I do? Right. I started out and I had some ideas of what I had to implement, but I wanted to make sure that I would implement the most important things first, so that they actually would be able to pull the highest levers, right? Because there's always things you could do. Technically, you could like increase your closing rate. You could create a new CRM, right? You could hire new people. There's a lot of things you could do to solve problems, but the question is, which is the first problem you want to solve, right? So that's the most important thing, right? And the only way to know which problem is to know what are the numbers. And if you don't know the numbers, well, that means that we know the problem, which is you don't have the numbers, you don't have tracking, right? So that's the first thing I did. I just asked him for the numbers. And based on that, I was able to assess what was the biggest constraint, right? Now, even before I handled and fixed the constraint, which was actually an interesting one, what I had to do first was set up some basic systems, right? So the new systems were tracking sheet for sales and clients, right? Also helping with delivery to make sure that if the delivery is more tracked, then the founders can have more time to spend in sales, right? To bring on more people, obviously. Then tech, right? Making sure that I would have access to the recordings so that I could review the calls and give advice. Tech, right? Making sure that, that's recordings, and then Calendly link, right? With the settings of the link itself, the questions for the form, right? And then reminders, right? Making sure people showed up. And then the integrations to make sure that we were getting the proper notifications inside of Slack to keep track of things, as well as the makeshift CRM inside of the Google Sheet. And then ultimately also the scripts, SOPs, and identity training, right? Which was super important. So these are kind of fundamental things that you would do regardless, right? But these are actually the biggest bottleneck. It was the systems, because everything was in place, right? The traffic was there. The organic content was amazing. The people were amazing. They were just waiting for a little bit of direction in terms of like numbers tracking in order to be able to scale to the next level. And the curious thing is that Steph is actually very intelligent and he's an amazing leader. Potentially his downside is a little bit the numbers, right? Getting into the numbers, into the details. And so clearly, a lot of times we kind of try to focus on the things that we're strong at, but actually the weaknesses is something that is stopping us from getting to the next level. It doesn't mean you have to shift your priorities in terms of like making that your strength, but you definitely need to either have somebody or you yourself kind of compensate for that, right? So that's basically what I did. The biggest thing was really just starting to review calls and setting up these systems. Basically, we took our show rate from 55% to 75%. With the tracking sheet, we actually had accurate numbers, so we knew exactly what to solve. And they did have tracking, but it was not accurate all the time. It was not being filled out, right? Which is the most important thing. So basically, doing quality control, making sure that everybody was filling out the form, filling out the sheets. Then on top of that, also the scripts, actually having a formula to follow on a call or in the inbox to know exactly what to say at which time and which procedure to follow, so that they wouldn't try to make it up on the spot, right? Especially the pitch on the call was very, very important. And also on top of that, what we did was create a thank you page with a video that allowed the person to be a little bit more warm before they hopped on the call. And all those things took the show rate from 55 to 75%, like I mentioned. It also took our booked calls per week from, I believe we were doing like 10, more or less, up to like eventually like 35 per week. So a lot more calls booked. Just that like would make the close rate a lot better. We actually hired another closer, which was, looking back, not the best decision, but we did have the volume for it, so we decided to hire another closer, and that actually worked out well. And ultimately, we implemented some things that just allow the process to work out better, more accountability. That was basically it. It's just making sure that people were filling in the details so that the data would be accurate on a daily basis, right? And so that basically took us from 9K per month, took my client from 9K per month in April to 36K per month in 36K in the month of May, in less than 30 days, I guess. Well, depending how you want to count it. And so, yeah, that was a pretty nice achievement. And the good thing is that kind of stayed on. We didn't necessarily, the next month was pretty bad, but we never made below than 17K, if I'm not mistaken, and practically 20K. And then it was there. It was always like 35, 40, 35. We were pretty consistent. And on top of that, but that's the next stage. We'll get to that in a second. But I'm excited to share that with you, right? And that's what pretty much we did, right? This is the process that I have, which is identifying the 5 main constraints that tend to happen at this level of business, which is bookings, show rate, closing rate, price, and marketing spend. And then based on that, be able to tell what to fix next, right? So bookings could have many reasons, right? The offer could not be as good as it could be so it's not attractive. So people are not messaging us to get on a call. The lead flow might be low. The CTAs might not be enough, right? The consistency of doing stories to get people in the DMs, that was not always very consistent. So we fixed that as well. Low setting volume, right? So the setter in the inbox was not as motivated or didn't know exactly how to have a workflow in order to be able to produce, right? Bad setting quality. This was not really the case, honestly, but for one of the setters it was, but that was not my responsibility. Actually, the other setter was the one that was teaching, even though I did aid here and there, but it was not really my case. And then no time. This is when the founder is doing it, right? Or the setter, and the time becomes a constraint. It's just like we have more leads, right? But no time to get to all of them, so we need another setter. Those could be all the reasons. For show rate instead, as next point, there's 4 main reasons why that might happen. The offer might not be as good, so people are not excited to get on the calls. The setting quality could not be that good, and so it makes people kind of like uneasy to hop on a call. They don't feel like comfortable. There's no thank you page to warm them up to the call, right, to get them excited. And also lack of reminders, right? That's a big one. So this was the biggest one, and then after that, this one. So by implementing the reminders and the thank you page, it got our show rate an extra 20%, which is pretty huge, right? 55% is quite low compared to average, even for B2C. And so 75 is a lot better. Next thing is closing rate, right? With the closing rate, it could be also, again, a bad offer, right? It's just the match of offer on is not the best. It could be the bad lead flow quality, a lot of broke people, a lot of people that are just not willing to invest for some reason, right? No thank you page again, right? Because it warms them up for the call. It can have an indirect effect. Low offer rate, right? So you can have a ton of calls, but maybe you just want to bring on the best people for some reason. And so you're not offering to everybody. Whereas honestly, I would recommend to have an 80% plus offer rate, meaning if you hop on a call with 10 people, offer to at least 8. And if you're not doing that and there's a like a practical reason, it's like you really they're not like a good fit, like very off, then that's a quality of the leads, and then you have to go into the inbox and fix that, right? Next is bad closing quality, which is the skill of quality. And this is what I helped with the most as well, which is making sure that the closers that were coming in could close as well, if not better than the founder. And even the founder, he was very good at in terms of identity, but the framework was not being followed, right? There was not a clear script to follow. It was all in his head, which makes it a lot harder to remember, right? So the script can give you an idea. And what I mean by this is not don't have a script on the call. What I mean is that you can have a structure that you follow every single time, so you don't have to think about questions on the spot, right? But you still don't use a script on the call, obviously. You memorize it to some extent, right? And then the other thing that could be the bottleneck is the price, the constraint, right? The price. If the price is under 5K, it's going to be really hard to scale with the team. Like you're not going to be able to pay them enough, and you're going to have to do a lot of reps. Right? You basically need to close like 8 to 9 a week just to get to 100K, and that's if everybody pays the front. It's insane, very very hard. And so that was something that we kind of were a little bit shy about. Eventually, we got the price to 3K, and now it's at 3,800. But the next step will be to go above 5K into 6K range, right? Which will allow us to really scale to the next level. And sometimes that's all you need, just increase the price. So you want to increase the price if you have a 40% plus closing rate. This is an obvious sign you should be increasing the price. Even if you have like 20 to 25%, you can still increase it as long as the other things are in place, right? If you have a lot of PIFs, right, meaning paid in fulls, like a lot of people just paying everything at once without price shock, they're like, oh yeah, that's easy, right? They're not like shocked about the price. That means your price is too low. They should be shocked at least to some extent. And if you have a lot of PIFs, well, imagine this: like, let's say you get a $3,000 paid in full from somebody, right? If you just double the price, now you just have a 2Pay, 3K plus 3K, right? Then you make double the money. So it's not about how can I get as many PIFs as possible. It's like how can I get as much cash collected as possible. So another reason to increase the price. If you believe the service is more and you can sell confidently, you should also increase the price. And this goes back to the offer, right? That's why bad offers kind of mentioned in a lot of these. Because if you improve the offer and you can justify the 6K from that, it just makes it a lot easier to raise the price, right? So I'd recommend that. So you can be even more confident. If the industry average is higher, you know of competitors that are charging twice as more, it's like raise your price. It's time, right? Unless people are really complaining in the back end, like you should raise your price. Money objections are not very common. This is also something else, right? It's like if they're like, yeah, let's do it, right? That shouldn't happen too often. You should have to handle it, especially in B2C, right? So that's important. And this one is important too. The industry average is higher because a lot of people are concerned that their delivery maybe is not the best in the world. I definitely had that, right, in the beginning, and so but that makes them kind of stuck in their head. But there are two main variables there, right? You have the quality of your service and you have the price that you charge, right? So let's start with the price. The price that you charge, if you double the price, unless it's ridiculously high compared to what you're offering, as long as there's a gap between what you're charging and what you're giving, then you can always raise the price, right? That is its own isolated variable. Now, in the delivery side, if you're not able to deliver on the promise, that's not the prices problem, right? That's not a pricing problem. That's just a you problem, not delivering to the promise that you made. And that's also a solvable problem, right? But one is an offer problem and the other is a delivery problem. So you have to separate those because a lot of people are shy about increasing their price. Um, and not because the offer is not good enough, but it's because, well, I don't know if I can get client results. Well, then you have to work on that, right? That's why, and I have another video coming out about product. Product is the most exponential thing you can work on. If you work on product, everything else becomes easier, right? But I'll talk about that in another video. Another thing for price, again, it's low delivery quality, right? It's just what I just mentioned. So perfect. Then the next thing is marketing spend, right? If you have a marketing spend that is above 35% of your revenue, that's a problem, right? Because then your profitability is going to be bad, and it's just not a good idea. And actually, more than marketing spend is profit margin, right? Because the profit margin is like what you pay out to setters and closers plus what you're paying on ads. So if it's above 35%, then it's like, and actually this is above, it's just concerning, right? So you have to fix that. And a lot of times that could be just you're not squeezing as much as possible from the ads. Maybe you're not turning off the ads that are too expensive, right? If it's follower ads, then it should be around $2 per follower. If it's DMs, right? People messaging you DMs directly, should be like $20 to $35 per conversation started. And there's a lot of different reasons, right? Maybe you're just not squeezing as much from your traffic, and that kind of comes into everything else, right? Bookings, you're not booking enough, right? And that affects everything else. So, and then affects the profit margin, right? Because then your cost of acquisition, cost per call booked, cost per conversation started, conversation started no, but everything else becomes higher. So it's like obviously your profit margin is going to be bad, right? So that was step one, right? Which is implement some basic systems and then work on the bottlenecks. The next thing was, okay, ideally, now that we have a setter and closer, and actually one of the both setters left eventually because they wanted to do their own thing. And then I had to hire somebody else, and that was good, right? But that was because of a constraint, because it made sense not to have Steph in the DMs booking people. So what we decided to do was to hire, and the hiring process looks like this. You basically need to find candidates and book calls with them. You can do that first through clients, then in your audience, then referrals, and then cold, right? That's kind of the order I would follow to book people in calls and then interview them following a basic script. And more so than like, what skills they have, what you want to focus on is their personality, is what I call the KCIs, which are key culture indicators, right? Because you might want somebody who's proactive, but if the person's not proactive, it doesn't matter how skilled they are, you're not going to be able to work with them. So they need to fit in that criteria. And the rule of thumb is if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. If you don't feel it in your gut, in your mind, or whatever, if there's any doubt, it's a no. Simple as it is, right? So then you book somebody, you pick somebody, you hire them and onboard them, right? Um, you can also set up Slack. That's important to create the culture with the community. And also ManyChat was useful a lot. Actually, we're still using it for kind of like a makeshift CRM for the inbox, right? So it's really good. And then more integrations in order to make that work, right? And then the goal is to ramp up the setter or the closer, right? If you want to hire a closer, into KPIs with a 1 to 4 week trial. And if they pass that, then they stay on the team. That's pretty much it, right? If they don't pass that, then you have to start over, unfortunately, right? But a lot of times it's under our control. If you hire well, that's like 80% of the work done. Now you just need to lead well, which is an easier problem to have, right? Pick the best person and you won't have to lead them as much. That's pretty much it. And that's pretty much it. Step 3, right? Which is you want to be able to manage mail. And so what I did is consistently review calls and conversations in the DMs to keep the quality high, right? That's why we call it quality control, and making sure that the interactions with people were up to standard, right? So calls and conversations, and then the interactions with the system were also up to standard, right? Meaning, like, would they do their end of their reports? Would they do put their numbers in? Would they kind of update the CRM, right, at the end of the day? And all those things were important. And on top of that, do daily sales team meetings to train, add conviction to their lives, right? Explain any kind of announcements and do projections. And that's actually my last point that I'll say today, which is projections. Projections is huge because what projections means is not a goal, right? So what you want is your team to set projections, meaning if everything goes wrong, I'm still going to be able to hit X amount of outcome, right? X amount of calls booked or Y amount of calls closed, right? And that gives you a floor, right? It gives you predictability so that when you want to spend more in marketing, you can also increase your projections by a proportional amount, and it will more than likely work. But for that to happen, you need data and accurate data. So, back to square one where you actually need the tracking in place. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then you just keep doing that. Like you go back to step 1, and you just do this. Okay, what's the next bottleneck? We need more bookings. Okay, now it's time. We gotta get somebody in, and we need, yeah, we don't have time anymore, right? And the calendar availability. So we need to hire somebody, and that's pretty much it. You do that until you get to 100K, and then other problems show up. But that's pretty much it, all the way up to $1 million a month, and then it all becomes a lot more about leadership at that point. So yeah, hope that's helpful. Have a great day, and yeah, please subscribe and like the video so that more people like you can see it. And talk to you soon. Hope it helped.